Alright, it is time to rank another soundtrack, and this episode will take a look at Road Rash on the Sega Genesis. Now, normally I just rank stage themes, no title screen, no boss music, no ending, shit like that. So keeping that format in mind, I will be just ranking the 4 race themes. Now I say 4 even though there are 5 different races, but that's because Palm Desert and Grass Valley are exactly the fucking same, minus a very subtle difference or 2, which I'll get into when talking about it, but I've combined them into one ranking or one spot of the ranking, so there'll be 4 songs to rank in the soundtrack. I'll start off like I normally do with the disclaimer that this list is strictly my opinion. It doesn't mean less or more than yours, so feel free to express that opinion in the comments. I encourage discussion and debate. So with that in mind, and without any further ado, let's get on with the ranking. Number 4, Sierra Nevada. It's the most up-tempo song on the soundtrack, by far. There's a nice signature riff in the opening verse, on top of the gallopy percussion that plays throughout the song. There's also a really cool guitar solo toward the end. The song has a lot of different sections, but despite that, it doesn't exactly feel like it. It's not that the riffs all sound the same, but there are a couple parts that are just kind of dull, and they don't stand out from each other all that much. Like there's a breakdown that has the guitar ringing out that goes into a bridge, which is okay, but it takes way too long. And then there's another variation of the guitars ringing out that goes into a percussion solo that changes things up a bit, but it also drags on. Although it does nicely flow back into the main verse. Overall, I do like Sierra Nevada, but it's easily my least favorite song in the game. Number 3, Grass Valley / Palm Desert. This is the same song for both stages, like I said, although there is an intro that's added in Palm Desert. You don't get it at all in Grass Valley, but each stage should have their own song. I feel like they should have included a whole nother track here for one or the other. Anyway, the main verse has a cool riff with notes at the end of pretty much every other measure that sustains and pitch bends like a whammy bar, which is pretty much a staple in the soundtrack. The bass is pretty killer, and there's a section where it's just the bass and drums showcasing that. And although I may sound like I'm contradicting myself by saying that the section in Sierra Nevada that was similar to this dragged on, this time I don't think that it's the case, just because I like the chord progression so much. There's also a part in the middle where there's what sounds like guitar feedback. It's a really cool effect, and you don't hear it on game soundtracks during this era or previously too much, or at all. Then later on, it sounds like the main verse comes in again, but instead of the lead riff repeating, there's a single chord that sustains in between each riff, which I love because you're trained to expect the main riff to just keep repeating like it does in the verse, but it subverts your expectations. I love when songs are not predictable, and this is an example of intentionally making that happen. Even if you know the song well, you could still find yourself getting caught off guard. Number 2, Redwood Forest. I love the rhythm section on this one. It's just got such a cool groove going on. And there's a few sections, including in the main verse, where it's just the rhythm section that's showcased. Kind of like the small part I mentioned in Palm Desert, Grass Valley. The majority of the song is nicely layered to where the guitar and bass are filling in just about every gap possible. There's no empty space, but it's still very cohesive. It's not overboard. That's good writing and production, to have multiple riffs going on at the same time that fill up all the empty space, but at the same time, it doesn't cause too much of a ruckus. Both by the notes not stepping on each other's toes, and the choices of tone and instrumentation can really make or break how well it all sounds together. I really like how every unique riff in the song sounds similar, like they're all calling back to each other, but at the same time, they're not the same. They all follow the pattern of the rhythm closely, but at the same time, they're different from each other. It's not repetitious at all. And just as a side note, this music is also played when showing the results after each race. And number 1, Pacific Coast. The song has a really cool bass groove going on during the intro, and then this screechy guitar comes in. It's a simple riff, but it's my favorite riff on the soundtrack, and the contrast complements the busy rhythm section so well. The screechy guitar shifts to a cleaner one that pretty much matches the choppy pattern of the percussion. Then it goes back to a more distorted tone. It's not quite as screechy, but it is on the high end side, and it has a lot of the Road Rash signature pitch bending going on. Then it goes back to another clean tone for the breakdown part, but the riffs are different this time around. Even the awesome sequence at the end that has a similar pattern as the clean guitar from earlier sounds way different from it, mainly due to the stabby instrumentation. I think this song succeeds where Sierra Nevada failed, although I wouldn't say failed is too accurate of a word choice, but Pacific Coast's various sections sound way more distinct against each other, and they stand out on their own while being more memorable in general than Sierra Nevada's sections, even while both songs maintain a steady, consistent beat all throughout. So that's it for this list. Here's a quick recap. Number 4, Sierra Nevada. Number 3, Grass Valley and Palm Desert. Number 2, Redwood Forest. And number 1, Pacific Coast. So what are your thoughts? What did you think of the list? What do you think of the soundtrack? And what is your ranking? Feel free to leave these comments in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.